Welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see you today on the Frogeex Green Tech Talk on the topic of the future of forests. I welcome the speakers of today, which is a great pleasure to welcome Ms. Charlotte Opal from the Forest Conservation Fund, also Mr. JB Chaudron, and I'm always confusing the name. I hope you forgive me about this, from Restore Forest. So great pleasure to see you again, JB. Always a pleasure to have you on the call. I see we have also Dr. Giulio Camp, an environmental ecologist and economist as well. So environmental economist, sorry, for this, advising also Frogeex on the approach, being truly sustainable and staying true to principles that reflect protection of nature and like long-term sustainability, that we would like to follow with the solutions that we provide to the marketplace and bring to the marketplace. We will have also Mr. Henrique Miranda joining us today, hopefully at a later stage. So in this matter, I would like to hand over to Charlotte, because Charlotte is very experienced also in supply chains, working a long time with also fair trade and very experienced in this field. So Charlotte, would you maybe like to tell us more about this element?
Great, thanks. Jana, can you see my slides? Okay, great. Well, thanks again. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the discussion today. I just have a very quick presentation to just get us all on the same page about how forests are doing. As Jana showed us, the future is not looking very bright. This is what WWF predicted a few years ago for the tropical rainforest, which is where I work. On this trajectory, we're losing forests very fast. And this is despite hundreds of companies committing to no deforestation. And so if we cannot get this deforestation rate down, we're losing. You guys have seen all the fires and even in the US where I am from, in Europe, and obviously Brazil. It's a big emitter. And the most important driver here really is agriculture. So companies, supply chains, but agriculture is responsible for 80% of deforestation. Obviously, mining is a big driver, and also logging, but really the main driver here is agriculture. And so I've been working throughout my career on sustainable supply chains, so fair trade and no deforestation. And we launched the Forest Conservation Fund, which I'll explain to you, to make it easy for these companies that are directly or indirectly driving deforestation to actually protect these forests. Just as a reminder, the forests provide livelihoods for 1.6 billion people, So that's things like food that they get from the forest, or fish that depend on rivers that are fed by forests, the pollinators that live in forests that pollinate some of our key commodities and tree crops. They regulate our temperature, they regulate water and soil erosion. And so we cannot afford to lose these forests, and no pathway to keeping our planet within 1.5 degrees of warming is possible without protecting our remaining forests. So this is a big challenge for all of us. And the problem really is that businesses that are ultimately driving this deforestation don't have the tools they need to fight it. So right now, the way that companies implement no deforestation is by buying from certified product, which comes from a farm that wasn't established on recent forest, or stopping buying from risky supply chains. But all that does really is move around the risk. It doesn't actually protect forests. So you can build a deforestation-free supply chain, but the forest next door, if it's not protected, is still going to disappear for your competitor or another product. So really, in terms of actually being forest positive, actually protecting forests, we found that there wasn't really a tool available to do that. We really, in Forest Conservation Fund, we really want to focus on the opportunity here, which is all of that forest that's disappearing, moving it into protection, and then financing that protection. And the opportunity that we see is really working with Indigenous people and local communities on these tropical forest frontiers who want to protect their forests, but just need the land tenure, land rights, and the financing to protect it. And we've been seeing in recent years that Indigenous people especially are the best protectors of forests, because they often, their culture is linked in their whole social structure and meaning of their people is linked to the forest staying standing. So they have a spiritual connection. Their livelihoods are connected to the forest. They get all their medicine, plant, food, everything they need from the forest. And so it's in, they're very connected to it. And if they can just get their management rights and some financing, they actually do a great job protecting it, even better than a national park or something like that. So in Forest Conservation Fund, we're really trying to capitalize on this opportunity for getting forests in the hands of local communities and indigenous people who can protect it. So basically what we do is we're a connector between funders who are interested in forest conservation for whatever reason. So it could be companies that are buying cocoa or coffee or meat or palm oil from rainforest countries and connecting them with these excellent conservation projects. We're a nonprofit. We're based in Switzerland. We have staff in Indonesia and the UK. And really what we do is we vet the projects on these rainforest frontiers. So these are pictures from our different projects around the world. I have a map I'll show you. And we do the due diligence on them to make sure that the community has the capacity to manage the forest, that the land rights are clear, and then we do the monitoring. Once the project is approved and it's funded, we do satellite monitoring to make sure the forest stays standing. And when we help the communities when they need advice and guidance on, or if they have an issue with mining or illegal logging or anything like that. So we're really the support structure for them and the quality assurance for the donors. And then we repackage the impact information back to the donors, and then they use it for their internal company marketing, for their employees, or consumer facing marketing. This is a map of where we're working. So we're really working on the tropical forest frontier because that's really the main drivers of deforestation are a lack of protection, and also just because of the biodiversity store, the carbon store. These are really precious forests that we need to protect. So we have 13 projects in our portfolio across 8 countries, really focusing on the tropical rainforest belt. And our model is really to help, especially companies and I say companies, but it's all of us, individuals as well. Everyone is reliant on the rainforest. We all consume products that are linked with rainforests, deforestation. So I'm sure all of us drink coffee or eat cocoa, eat chocolate. We use products in our electronics that were mined, in my laptop that I'm using right now, that were mined in these rainforest frontiers. So we are all connected, even if you work for a company that isn't really working in food, we're all still connected to the rainforest. So the idea here really is to tie in supply chains sourcing connections with rainforest protection in those important source countries. But it can also just be a link with a particular species that a company is interested in. It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct supply chain link. And then I just wanted to just leave you with one example of one of our projects. This is on the island of Borneo. I don't know if you can see here, but this is the island of Borneo. This is the Indonesian part. And then this is an indigenous community called the Malui people, and they have ownership over a large area of forest right here that's adjacent to palm oil and pulp and paper plantations. And they're very intimately tied to the rainforest. They're really forest people. And so they want to protect their forest to keep it for their future generations, as you can see on their proverb here. And so they're using funding from a supermarket in the UK called Waitrose Supermarkets, and PZ Cousins, which is a shampoo and body care goods company, who are funding the protection. So the patrols, the biodiversity monitoring. They have some endangered primate species like this super interesting looking proboscis monkey. They have hornbills. So they're doing collecting biodiversity data. They've bought handheld devices to help them do that and track it over time. They're also responding if miners come in or loggers come in, they're able to respond and show their papers. They have, funded patrols, but they're also doing livelihoods training to help the community thrive next to the forest so that it doesn't have to expand into the forest to farm. So they're doing training on improving farming techniques and adding value to their farmed products as well. And they just won an award for the best, one of the top environmental organizations in Indonesia, which is really exciting because it's just a very local indigenous community, very local nonprofit helping them. And so we're really proud to work with projects like this all over the world. The idea is really if we can support these together, these smaller projects that are really working really well, then we can have 1,000 flowers bloom and protect all of this forest that's at risk of deforestation.
Okay, so JB, would you like to take the stage and tell us more about your approach and where do you see forests are potentially going and how you or we can help them together?
So first, I would like to start saying that I'm a fierce defender of natural primary forest and natural regeneration. According to me, our priorities in terms of forest should be first to protect, second to manage, and third to restore. Here today we will speak about the third pillar, restoration of forest, and what we do with restoreforest.com. We plant new mini forests on land where there was no trees anymore, such as urban lands or industrial lands. And we do that with the community. And we use the Milwaukee methodology. So in this presentation, I will share with you the basics, fundamentals of the Milwaukee method of mini forest. So first, who is Dr. Akira Miyawaki? He's a Japanese botanist, and he passed away at the age of 93 years old in 2021. He spent his whole life to study nature first and how natural forests developed. He did that in Germany, but also in Japan, and in particular close to Japanese temples where forests are sacred and where they thrive naturally and without any human intervention. And he discovered that over the times, the natural forests, they follow the different ecology stages, going from grasses to shrubs to pioneer species and with climate species. Studying these natural forests, it clearly felt that a forest is really a tree community. Unlike trees that we can see in our cities, lone trees in big pots sometimes, trees really work together in a sense of community inside a forest. And he developed the concept of potential natural vegetation. That is to say, the selection of native species that are really adapted to your climate and your soil in a specific area. And we will see together how this changes with climate change a bit. And the final intent was really to reproduce mature 3D forests, that is to say, multi-layer forests. In a primary forest or in a jungle, we have really different heights of trees close together. So I would like to share 4 lessons from the Milwaukee method. The first lesson is that a close collaboration provides the best results. In a primary forest, clearly there is a high density of trees, as we can see on this picture. Because there is a collaboration between trees. In conventional planting, sometimes we feel about competition, but clearly in a natural forest or jungle, in a primary forest, there is a collaboration with a nutrient share between the trees through the roots. The roots are interconnected through the wood wide web, and they help each other. This provides a really healthier growth compared to monoculture, for example. And in our Milwaukee mini forests, we plant 3 trees per square meter in our temperate forest, but it can go up to 7 trees per square meter in mangrove projects. And we see that this is very dense compared to what we see with conventional planting. Lesson 2 is that diversity is the key to build a resilient system. On this picture, we can see a birch monoculture. And it really feels like an army of clones. And this is clearly for timber production. But we can feel that this forest is not resilient. And we can question this capacity of adaptation of such a plantation. Because just imagine if a sudden change in climate, for example, or pests arrive in this forest, the adaptation will be low, and we won't get such a resilient mix as we get in a very diverse forest. In our Milwaukee mini forests, we have selected sometimes up to 30 native species to create this resilient mix. Currently, with climate change, we adapt a bit the list of species we plant, because we have discovered that some species, some native species that we found in previous reference forests, not very resilient and resistant, in particular with water and drought. So we really select the best chance native species. And in the end, with this diversity, the intent really is to create a multi-layer forest with shade-tolerant species, for example, and this very resilient mix. So lesson 3 is that life is chaos. We need to accept it and to adapt. In our Milwaukee mini forest planting, there is no industrial planting like it's done in a conventional planting for timber industry, like a straight line with a long distance between trees to be able for large machinery to pass by. So it's a total random disorder inside the plantation. And this provides a good protection against the external attack against the forest. For example, with storm winds, snow, or even sun scorching the soil. And we create that with a non-linear layout. We give the 3 trees per square meter to the planter, and then it's up to the creativity of the planter. And that's why Dr. Akira Miyawaki enjoyed the planting with school kids, because it was an organized mess. Lesson 4 is that you need a healthy base to thrive. This is true for trees, but for humans as well. You need good roots to develop. And that's why in the Milwaukee method, the soil preparation is really a cornerstone, because we need to mimic what we get in a primary forest with a soft and healthy dark soil. And we spend a lot of time on soil analysis and soil preparation for our trees to be able to thrive after the plantation. We will finish with some example. This one, for example, is a case study with one of the first mini forests we did. It was a restoration of a green corridor in the northeast of France. It was also a test parcel to test different techniques to improve the Milwaukee method. And you see that just after 2 years, the mini forest is thriving with a survival rate of 91%. It has been done also involving the local community with school kids and so on. So it's really a social event. And on the photo on the left, you can see that I've done that in particular with my father and my son, and it was also a nice family event. And in particular, school kids, they just love to plant their own tree. And it's a good way to reconnect school kids to nature and to use it as an education platform. So we see that many forest projects are popping on around the world. It started in the 70s in Japan with Dr. Akira Miyawaki. One of the first projects he did was close to a iron factory, and he developed more than 1,700 projects around the world. You can see here on the left, different projects in Japan, in India, in the Netherlands, in Europe. So it's great to see these mini forests popping up. And clearly, after several years of return of experience, it works. It works both to reconnect people to nature in their direct environment, but also on biodiversity. We see rapid positive results with biodiversity coming back to this mini forest. So that's the end. This is really the solution for us to bring back nature in our direct environment, and in particular in urban environment, because the benefits are numerous. Clearly, it will improve our life conditions. It will enhance our well-being and health. It will fight climate change, reducing the heat island phenomenon with this cool forest, and it will be a support for biodiversity. So that's why we work hard to create these mini forests around the world, and in Europe in particular, because people will connect to this nature and will be willing to fight for it, to protect it.
Let's go to Henrique. Then we would have a quick round with Julio, his opinion, his perspective on, what are the procedures, so we know what is the adaptation strategies that you currently see popping up all around the world. Every country has slightly different approaches, also due to the type of the forest, and we have different solutions. So I'm really curious about, his perspective to that.
We have some ideas on how we can contribute for some of them. And that's what I intend to show you today to a short presentation. We know that there is an increasing evidences that the health of our planet is declining at a rate never seen in human history, putting the global economy at risk. Examples of these are climate change, which translates into alternating periods of drought and floods, and contamination of the oceans with chemicals resulting from human activities. Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations predictions for population growth by 2050 will create an enormous political pressure on farmers, or at the same time could reduce the consumption of water and fertilizers, and also increase the volumes of food produced. Faced with these challenges, and because we care about the future of Earth and the conservation of its resources, we know how important it is to reconcile these demands with the economic sustainability of agriculture and forestry businesses. It is very well known that from all the water we have in the planet, only 3% is fresh water. From this fresh water, only 1% is easily accessible, with much of it trapped in glaciers and snow fields. In essence, only 0.007% of the planet's water is available to fuel and feed its 8 billion people. Agriculture activities are responsible for the consumption of more than 67% of the total. So it is imperative to do something with impact, and that impact will have to start on agriculture. Our contribution to the mitigation of these effects and to companies in addressing these constraints is given through a technology called Porous Alpha. With this technology, it is possible to optimize operating costs by reducing the use of water and fertilizers, but at the same time still increase the yield of crops and the sustainable preservation of biodiversity. And here I emphasize one thing, that is, I suppose that Jean-Baptiste was talking about biodiversity over the surface. I'm talking about biodiversity below the surface. And this is the big contribution that Porous Alpha can bring. The effect of Porous Alpha can be compared of that of a sponge. When mixed with the soil, let me see if I can find a pointer. Okay. When mixed with the soil, It retains water and diluted nutrients, allowing plants to use these resources in an organic way. Without efficient water management, agriculture and forestry is not an economically and environmentally sustainable activity. I would like to spend 1 second more here. On the top, first of all, porous alpha technology is made out of recycled glass. It uses seashells or eggshells as source of calcium carbonate, and additionally with a secret IP protected ingredient. In a typical soil, the water that drops over the soil infiltrates, 50% of it infiltrates, some 20 to 30% are evaporated, and only 20% remains close by the roots. With porous alpha, because it absorbs, so it's not absorption, it's adsorption. It retains the water without competing with the tree or the vegetable for it. It will retain the water and the nutrients close to the roots and close to where it is located. So by this, we reduce the amount of water that infiltrates in the soil, and with the water, we have the nutrients, fertilizers, pesticides, whenever it is used. I have here a particular case because we were talking about forest trees. I made up this slide based on nurseries. Usually on nurseries, the death rate is quite high, meaning that they waste a lot of trees during their growing process in nurseries. If we use porous alpha mixed with the soil while the seeds are in the nurseries, we can achieve extremely good results. I put here that we can reduce from 6 to 16%, and of course it will depend on how sensitive the plant is or the tree is, and how sensitive the place where we are operating the nursery is. In this case, it was in Morocco, and as you can imagine, it's not easy to grow things in Morocco. But we achieved these results. So I will not bother you with the numbers. I just want to emphasize that for olive trees, orange trees, and palm trees, we got extremely good results with it. So reducing the amount of death rate and increasing for the best category, so the best performers, they were 3 times higher than when compared with the control plot. So it's here you have something that you can think about in terms of nurseries. And I think about nurseries because porous alpha can also be used in the soil where we plant a tree. But if it is during the nurturing process, if we use this porous alpha, when we change the seedling from the vase or the cup into the soil, it will not notice an extreme change in terms of its surrounding environment, the roots I'm talking about. So they are already used to the biodiversity that was developed there, because also porous alpha retain microbes. So the microbes and bacteria could be in the porosis of porous alpha. So all this biodiversity goes with the plant. So the change from a vase to a soil is not a big issue.
Matter, I would continue and hand over to Giulio. Giulio, would you like to give us some insights on this? Maybe I can give a little bridge until we continue, and that is basically a little like a excursion through the adaptation practice that we see currently. I mean, there are several cases. If you read about this, certainly you will read a lot about practices around that, and some of them actually, and that was really like the key element, some really go into the direction of speeding up, artificially speeding up the adaptation capabilities of nature. Looking to, for example, here in Switzerland, we have practices, we have forestries and nurturing schools that bring new species from the south here to Switzerland to plant them, to test them, to let basically new trees adapt to the environment faster than being naturally being blown here by seeds and whatever, if animals would be carrying them over. Just because the rate of drafts, it's quite clear, everybody is aware of this. We see that we have a progression, and the conditions for forests are being more difficult. So what the expectation is, there will be less more leafy trees and less of typically typical forests that are for mountainous areas, like with I'm not a professional, so with needles I would say, but for sure you will have a better expression for that. So especially looking now at the environmental impact and the whole discussion around not native species being imported. Now having all this COP15 discussions behind, that we finally have some, percentage to reserve some, natural areas to stick to potentially. Giulio, what is your perspective on that? To bring in new species, to speed up, help nature to adapt faster, and where do you see the risk and maybe the opportunity, the benefit of it?
Okay, bringing new species. Yes, that's a no-no. I like it very much what JB exposed to those many forests, particularly that they focus on native species. There is always a problem when we talk about bringing species that are not native, exotic species, no matter if it's trees or animals or whatever. Because if they adapt better to the new environment than the native species, they'll become an invasive species and start to compete to gain the competition for resources, and ultimately kill and destroy all the native species that are on the place. So we talked another time. We have a serious problem here in Brazil. And that is not trees, but it's corals. The sun coral came from Africa in ballast tank of ships. It was totally by accident, and it is now ultimately it is destroying and killing all native corals from Brazil when it grows. So with trees, that the same. We always must go to the native species, and no matter how careful we are, a exotic species, a foreign species that we bring, will end up escaping to nature, and we can control that. It is hard to control the animals. It is nearly, I'll say, impossible with trees. So that's a no. We need to work with native species and try to work better than with what we have. And also, I don't like much the idea to speed up nature, because nature evolved for 4 billion years. It's at its apex of efficiency today. So we cannot say that, but we cannot play gods and try to speed up, which is already the most efficient that exists. So the system that GB presented, I find it very, very interesting, very helpful, but as he pointed out, with native species always.
Good. Thank you so much for feedback on this. I see we have questions from Youssef, Diego. So I have not seen who was first, so I would just say Youssef, if that is okay for you, Diego. We had a question from Obi, and we have a question also in the chat regarding Poros Alpha. So let's go one by another. If I can ask you, let's keep it tight so we get as many questions as possible then. Youssef?
Okay, I'm gonna be fast. First of all, great presentations from three of you, JB, Charlotte, and Henrique. I have a question and some comments about the presentation of JB. When you were talking about the climate change, fighting climate change, and selecting native and focusing on native species to reforest or redevelop the forest. In fact, climate change is a fact. We cannot change it, we cannot stop it, we can help it reduce increasingly. As I am an old paleontologist, so climate change is a must. It has to be there, the cycle and so on. But we as a human, we have accelerated this phenomena. But what I would like to know is when you select the native species or the species that you want to reforest, we all know that there is some competitiveness that's going to be between the trees, depending on the environment and the fluctuation of the microclimate that will be created by this forest or microforest itself. Have you been studying or analyzing or taking into consideration all these parameters with the microclimate that can be generated by reintroducing other species facing the other species that have been developed or that has developed in this same area? I will only stay on this question. I will not ask any further, so Diego can talk also afterwards.
Sure. And you're totally right on this aspect. I would add that for trees, there is both climate that is important, but also soil. And native species are really adapted to soil as well. So that's why I'm not a fan at all of importing exotic species or with assisted migrations of south species, for example. What I would prefer is to select in reference forests the different list of native species, because nature does the job very much better than us humans or machines. And then in this list, we see that some species are already suffering from the fast pace of climate change. So sometimes we try to remove these species because we know that they won't deal with it. But on some projects, we also implemented these sensitive species in our mini forest. And as you said, these mini forests, they create a microclimate. And we see that with dense plantation, there is this clear collaboration between the stronger species with the weaker species, and also with a lot of humidity. It retains much more water in this dense plantation, so they can deal better with it than sensitive species alone in other places.
Thank you so much. Diego, I see we have from Dr. Rohan Chabra also a question. There is also a question from Charlotte and one for Henrique as well. Diego, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, just a point, like the point about exotic species. Like here in Brazil, we have problems with exotic species too. We have problems with pinos, with eucalyptus. We have, like here in the Atlantic forest, we have problems with Pittosporum undulatum, that is a tree comes from Australia, that is very aggressive, 90% of germination, and yeah, it start to create a lot of problems, include in preserved forests. So yeah, like use exotic species, it's all the time a problem that can go out of control. And yeah, like it's not a good way to solve a problem, creating another problem. About like the Milwaukee technique, I like the Milwaukee technique, but one point that I have some concern about the mini forests, like all the time that you reduce too much a forest, you start to create an effect of the borders. So these increase a lot the stress in forest, and this can create a lot of reduction of the resilience of a forest. So when you start to increase this stress, and like in a long term, these forests cannot maintain or cannot be stable in a long term. So it's better in that way. When you create a mini forest, try to create corridors and not just mini forests, like small islands of forests. So this can increase the resilience and increase even the exchange between genetic materials between forests. This can improve the biodiversity, the resilience, and so on. Another point about the Milwaukee techniques is about like when you increase the density of a forest, you can create an effect, like you increase the row of the trees, and this can reduce the security of the trunk of the wood of the tree, and these reduce the resilience of a forest in a long term. So this forest can suffer more about water stress or a drought or something like that in the future. So yeah, we need to take care when we implement a forest like that to prevent these problems. So yeah, I think it's.
JB, would you like to comment? Thank you so much, Diego. Maybe just to also introduce Diego. Diego is also working in an organization that is focusing on holistic sustainability management and advisory services for organizations. So always appreciate your feedback. And I really like the idea of corridors, because we discussed it also in terms of resilience of ecosystems and biodiversity and the creation of borders, because it's very difficult. It was like this aquarium example that we discussed, where it's very difficult to maintain a small system in a balance. The more it's connected, the natural, the flows are, if I understood you correctly, which is kind of fascinating. So JB, sorry, just wanted to comment on that fascinating element.
Yeah, but very quickly, it's right. As I was a system engineer, it's absolutely connected to Milwaukee mini forest. You have a size effect and a scale effect, and for sure the border is important. And we see that with the different projects we did. In urban cities, we have planted some very tiny forests, and it's a bit difficult, but at least it's a patch of nature bring back to cities. But when we do that in the countryside with regenerative farmers, for example, on large scale, for sure the results looks like much more like a forest than a plot or a grove. Yes, that's right.
And also a question, because it's a lot connected. I mean, we work with JP also in the context of urban forests, urban environment, and how to enrich these areas with green elements. And of course, you know, this is also a great connection, and this is also a great, you know, like a point to discuss in terms of all this infrastructure and planning. And when you have this urban plans, and you know, there are these corridors basically, you know, implemented in several cities. So it's a great connection to kind of not plan individual spots, but have a larger concept behind it and connect it. So it's a great point. Thank you so much, JB. I have a question for Charlotte, and then we have Henrique, and we have 5 more minutes to go officially, and we have Dr. Chabra then. So Dr. Chabra, if you would like to go first, and then we go a speed question session, if we can.
Hello.
Hello, we hear you.
Audible? Good evening, good afternoon to all, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, to be really honest. My question is to JB sir, and it's a phenomenal presentation. What you have mentioned is absolutely right. People do not follow these things. I do not understand why. It's such simple science, and still we are not able to understand this. I don't know. People are talking about the mapping brain altogether on a different level, and we are still not able to create simple forest. So it's really amazing to see that how different ends of world and research community is working. So my basic question is that we see a lot of smart cities coming up, a lot of concept of smart cities coming up, but we fail to integrate these small ecosystems like mini forest in those. We call them smart cities. However, I do not feel that they are really very smart. But however, have you come across any project across the globe who has this concept of integrating mini forests in a township and basically a city of future? I can say that towards building a city of future. Have you come across any projects across the globe? Thank you.
So far, I haven't seen a new cities built in connection with nature. Usually, it's a nice view from architects. I can say that we have across the world cities called green cities with a higher tree coverage. For example, Amsterdam, where I live, has an impressive tree coverage. But cities like Singapore manage in a very efficient way to increase the tree coverage of the city. So it happens, and it only works when it's done with techniques that are really inspired by nature. Because one more time, nature has the best R&D development departments. It worked and tested and different things over billions of years. So we need really to observe and to biomimic what works inside nature.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now the question to Charlotte. Charlotte, so you mentioned also like the concept of different countries, different projects, and it looks like a belt. Is it like a fixed or final project, or you continuously add new projects, you look for partners potentially from the regions? And how do you select, how do you get in contact with these indigenous communities? Because that's really the approach now that everybody is now kind of waking up to and saying, hey, these are the people that know how to do it the best, they have the best results, just pay them what it's really fair and just let them do what they are great at it. And so how do you get to them? I mean, how do you get to know them?
Yeah, so we have a huge network in the main countries where there's still forests left. So in the Congo Basin countries and the Southeast Asia forests and the Amazon. And a lot of these communities are working with local lawyers, local land rights NGOs to get their tenure. So we have contacts with them and then we get projects sourced through them. Depending on the country, there is an awakening now that community forest tenure is something that's good for everyone, democracy and protecting forests. And so the Democratic Republic of Congo has strong legislation. Indonesia has strong legislation. Many countries in Africa, actually, that make it easy, relatively easy for a community to get tenure if they just have some help to go through the process. So we partner with those NGOs that are helping communities and they send us projects. So we are looking for new projects, but also we want to find donors that are interested in that project. So we're sourcing, but also pitching at the same time to get sponsors for each for us before we don't want to have too many projects in our portfolio that are funded.
Super, super. Hey, thank you so much. And so is there, just out of what you were just saying, maybe I can just take 30 seconds. Is there any security or, like a check, or how long is like when you decide I want to support this project? I mean, how is it like, how does it work?
So our current funding model is really an annual operational funding. It's not very expensive to protect these forests, the patrols and everything once the land rights are secure. So we found that it's something that's affordable for companies to pay annually for the operational costs. We could move to a model where you're endowing a forest and the protection costs come out of that. But so far, we're really focusing on the annual, just funding the annual operational costs. And when we look at how much it costs to protect forests equivalent to what we need to plant palm oil or whatever, cocoa, it adds 1% to 2% on top of the price. So it seems like something that the supply chain has been able to absorb so far. It's like I said, it's really protecting the forest we have is much, much cheaper than trying to recreate nature. As we've heard, it's very complicated. So just protecting nature and letting her restore herself is I think a really good use of our dollars. So let me know if you'd like to do it.
Definitely drop a link in the chat for the project. Everybody invited. Youssef, your question, then a question to Henrique, and then we can close.
If you need to close, I can ask my question afterwards. It's for Charlotte, but it depends on the time.
Go. Maybe some other people will also benefit from what you are asking, and maybe they have the same question. So
okay, so in fact I follow a lot ESG issues, sustainability strategies, and so on. And I saw in your presentation that you, like you said now, you base a lot of your funding on companies and industries sometimes to give you funding, and you send them back the reports in order to use them in financial data and so on. What I would like to know is now with this, I would like to know your point of view, especially with the new CSRD in Europe, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Standards, that will adopt new standards and frameworks for ESG, European Sustainability Reporting Standards with EFRAG. And on the other hand, on international wise, we have the ISSB standards, International Sustainability Standards Board with IFRS. I'm sorry for all the acronyms. What do you think about the companies? Do you think, first of all, that the companies will invest more in this type of projects for protecting the environment with these new regulated frameworks on ESG? Second of all, are you not afraid of these same industries and companies will invest with you, but at the same time that they're still corrupting and doing harm to the environment according to their activities, or not having sustainable procurement policies and so on?
Yeah, so for the second question, we do due diligence on our private sector donors. They can't be deforesting with one hand and protecting forests with the other. So they have to have a strong no deforestation policy that they're implementing. On the first question, I think these are positive, as long all these reporting requirements and understanding your risks, as long as it doesn't turn into greenwash. And so what we always recommend companies is to understand how they're impacting tropical rainforests and all the other part, they might be impacting their local community as well, and to include ESG interventions that touch all of those impacts. And so we're providing something that's easy to do for tropical rainforests, but if your impact is mainly in your country, you should be really focusing there. But like I said, we are all somehow connected to tropical rainforests, and the impact that you can have for the dollar spent is so huge that we hope that it can be part of these bigger ESG solutions.
Definitely. When we talk about 1 to 2%, I mean, these are numbers that you can deal with. Henrique, last question for you. So we had there a question on how is Porous Alpha comparable to biochar?
I replied on the chat, so because I took too long on my presentation, if you are then send the information to people, they can read. But Porous Alpha can retain 15% of its volume in water. It lasts endlessly, so it will not biodegrade, it will not degrade at all. It will stay as is in the soil. And it is produced, I'm answering to the 3 questions, and it is produced based with renewable energies. So as a matter of fact, we are taking out glass out of the landfills that otherwise would go to landfills, and we are recycling it. Just a small detail, we are the only ones in the world that can fully recycle photovoltaic panels. Photovoltaic panels contain lots of metals, and if something is done with it, sooner or later it will leachate into the soil. We have the technology to prevent that, so we are the only ones that can do that kind of guarantee, or give that kind of guarantee.
Okay, so are you working with some universities or something to research?
We are working with universities around the world. In UK, several universities, UHI, in US with RIT, so Rochester Institute of Technology, and the University of Maryland. We investigate continuously at the University of Tottori in Tokyo for developing Porous Alpha. And we want to grow programs together with universities to develop even further. For instance, we worked with Estonian University, where Porous Alpha was used to remove heavy metals and radioactive elements from the water.
From water. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you so much. I don't want
to. Final comment on
Yes.
ESG and CSR. CSR, so Corporate Sustainability Report, was normally a bunch of paragraphs of intentions, but ESG, either if it is regulated by GRI in Holland, that now it's translated into European regulation, or ISSB. They have to comply with KPIs from each one, from the respective area. So the risk of greenwashing that Charlotte was mentioning is heavily reduced due to that. But it doesn't mean that it can be done. One other thing about not about us, better to earth, but we can help someone willing to do so, is the carbon credits, the volunteer carbon credits. If someone wants to talk about that, feel free to get in contact with us.
Thank you so much for your attention, for being here with us, for the questions, for the great discussion, and I see you on the next one.